On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1993. We're going to be taking a look at Tool, and they're going to be performing Sober. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get the guys up on screen and see how they get on.
Just behind me, shouting every step I take, making every promise empty, pointing every finger at me, waiting like a stalking butler, who upon the finger rests, murdered now the battle must be, just because the sun has come. Mother Mary, won't you whisper something but the passing time? Mother Mary, won't you whisper something but the passing time? Why can we not be sober? Just want to start this over. Why can't we sleep forever? Just want to start this over. I am just a wordless fire. I am just an imbecile.
I'm just going to jump in here. As always, the link to this video is going to be in the description below, so you guys can click on it to watch it the whole way through without me interrupting it. But there is so much in this performance to point out. The first thing is that it's one of those performances that is full to the brim with emotion and expression. And when we start out, you can hear immediately on the guitar sound, we are loud. The guitar is feeding back. We've also got that octave D happening on the bass. And by the way, if you have got your guitars out, you want to be in drop D here, tuning wise. So take that low E string down to a D, and then you're fine. You'll be able to hit that open D chord down at the bottom. It'll be a D5, but it just gives such body to the sound, especially with the amount of distortion we've got going on. But it's the attitude. When you get into heavier genres of music, the detuning really takes it to another place. We are going to be getting the guitar out later on just to go through a few things. But straight off the bat, we've got that feedback. We know it's going to be loud. There's attitude there. And the one thing that really does set the scene is Danny Carey on drums, because look at the way he's hitting that snare, and listen to the snare on the 2 and 4 of the bar. It is so aggressive, and he doesn't let up with that. And the drums are such an integral part of the dynamics and where a band starts and the way that it can be controlled throughout a song. It just so happens here that with Danny, he is so solid as a drummer, fantastic drummer from every single perspective. But just listening to the drums throughout this whole performance, from a tempo perspective, it is so solid the whole way through. The fills are so solid, and the fills are also played with an intensity and with bad intentions. There isn't any holding back here, which is the whole point, because this is setting the scene for the lead vocal that comes in. And when you're talking about a standalone lead vocal and one that is totally different to a lot of lead vocals that you will hear, certainly Maynard is one of those that just hits you right between the eyes. And Maynard James Keenan here, by the way, to give his full name, doesn't let up with the vocal when he really leans into it. And this is a vocal performance that you can forget about analyzing it from a vocal teacher perspective and diaphragm, support, vibrato, stylizations, all of those things, throw them out the window, because this isn't what is happening here. We've got pretty much the sound of emotion in tune. That's the way to describe it. And we are going to be putting the spotlight on the vocals, and I know we are going to get the guitar out later on, I have said that, but the vocals are such an important part of this performance because they set the mood in the way that Maynard in the verses has that talking quality to his voice, but when he gets into the chorus, when he gets into the real raw emotion, it is shouting. It's something that hits home so hard because he's singing from a place that is so full of emotion it is a shout. But like I said, you can throw vocal techniques out the window here, because I guarantee you that Maynard, when he was singing this, was not thinking about vocal techniques, diaphragmatic support, posture, all of those things that you will be taught in singing lessons. He is focusing on getting across the emotion of what he's singing about and telling his own personal story. That's the one thing that really does strike home hard, is the fact that you can tell that he has lived what he is singing about. And that's why you could take one of the best singers and best technical singers that there's ever been and give them this performance, and they would not be able to perform it like this. They wouldn't get the same connection with you if you're listening to it, because they'll be applying vocal techniques, trying to get the emotion and the impact through those techniques. They're not just going for that impact immediately, which is what Maynard's doing here. He's just telling you a story. And if you want to compare it to anything, if you've ever been angry at someone and you've shouted at them, before you've done that shouting, you haven't thought about, right, I'm really angry, but before I shout at somebody, I'm going to make sure that my posture's correct. I want to get a good diaphragmatic breath in there, get some support, make sure I breathe from the diaphragm and not from the chest. You don't think about these things when you're full of emotion. You just shout. And you do project your voice naturally. It's what humans do in particular situations. Singing is something that you do after the fact. You then analyze what happened and realize that, oh, in order to project my voice, I took in a lot of air and I had a lot of anger. I did push down on my diaphragm, but it wasn't dependent on the way that I was standing and keeping my shoulders straight, my back straight and all square. And if you did get a singer trying to do this kind of performance in that style, it would sound contrived and it would look like that because they're trying to achieve the goal through the improper means, and it just wouldn't sound right. So this is why it's one of those standalone vocal performances that we're looking at, because it's nothing to do with vocal technique. It's all to do with emotion. This is the thing that when you shout, it's instinctive, and that's what humans really connect with, something that is an emotion that happens immediately through the voice. And here it's exactly what we're getting. There is no filter. So that's why you connect to it on such a deep level. And the way that it's being performed as well is so intense. Just look at the way that Maynard is focusing in one point the whole time throughout the performance. And this is the great thing about music. You can have such differences in bands and vocalists, and people might think that performing like this, because it doesn't have a lot of vocal stylization involved, that it's easy to do. And that is far from the truth, because when I talk about singers that I analyze on the channel, I mention about great singers having the ability to take their voice from one octave to an octave higher throughout a song, from a verse into the chorus, and just having that kind of range is something that a lot of people want in order to take you on that journey, not only dynamically really opening up the voice, but just from a pitch perspective. Just while I'm mentioning pitch, let me throw in there that this as a composition, there are so many musical elements that have been included in the composition of this track, where we start lower down pitch-wise vocally, then we start to raise up a little bit. When we get to the chorus, we are, in fact, an octave. We actually cover more than an octave here vocally. So, before you start thinking that this is easy to do, we've got a guy here that is covering over an octave with his voice. And when we're getting into that verse, we're around B flat, A, G. By the way, that's going to be a B flat 3, an A3, and a G3. Around that kind of range for the vocal in the verse. But then we do ascend as we progress to an F4, a D4. And by the time we get to the chorus and where Maynard really opens up vocally and pushes his voice, that's going to be around A4, and we get a B flat 4 as well. So that is just a tone off a male tenor high C. So it is way up there, and this is going to be in chest voice. He's really pushing his vocal here, but it's not about vocal technique. I'm analyzing what's going on, so I'm giving you the notes so that we can have a little bit of a comparison between notes that guys actually struggle to sing. The male tenor high C is seen as the holy grail for classical singers in chest voice, being able to get up that high. So we're only 2 notes off that with Maynard's performance here, and he is not holding back hitting these notes. Even the A4, that's what you'll see as the top end of the male tenor range. So he is hitting notes here that give him that range of over an octave, but he is just hitting these notes and dripping them in emotion because of the way that he's hitting them. This is the thing, that performing this as a guy, you would probably have to go to a lighter head voice configuration just to get the notes in the first place, and then it's not going to work. For example, if I went, "Why can't we just be sober?" It doesn't work. And even then, putting vibrato on at the end, forget all of your vocal techniques and stylizations, because you can't do it and get this kind of performance. The other thing is, the only reason that I can do that in the first place is because there are definite notes. We can hear them. Why can't we just be sober? So you can sing it, but you can't get it to sound like Maynard does because of the way that he just belts it out in his chest voice, but it's more of an emotional shout. But just in tune, there is such vocal accuracy here as well, and that's the great thing, that you can't just write this off as shouting, because shouting isn't hitting notes. There's vocal technique in here, but it's vocal technique after the fact of getting the emotion across first. And if somebody tries to do the vocal techniques first and hit the notes and then try and get the emotion, it's not going to work. Also, let me talk about the dynamic change. The top bands always go through this. You have these things that they all share. In the verses, listen to the way that the guitar is reduced in volume, and it's almost just a bass sound that we go to in order for the vocal to sit on top and to be clear. When we then get into the chorus, the distortion comes back and that volume is back up to 10 on the guitar because we want to have that dynamic change. We even have a dynamic breakdown in this song. So all of the band are on exactly the same page throughout all of the performance in terms of bringing the dynamic down in particular sections, especially for the verses, then totally leaning into the guitar sound and the drums and the bass in the chorus when Maynard is leaning into that vocal and just giving it everything that he's got. So you get that perfect unity across the band. Listen out for that as we progress into the track. But let's get back into it and we'll watch it all the way to the end and then we will get the guitar out.
Trusted faith for this world. I will find a center in you. I will chew it up and bleed. I will work to elevate you. Just enough to break it down. Mother Mary, won't you whisper something about the past and done? Mother Mary, won't you whisper something about the past and done? Just want to start this over. find a center in you. I will chew it up and leave. Trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. Why can't we not be sober? I just want to start this over. Why can't we sleep forever? I just want to start this over.
And there we have it. Just listening to the band as a whole, the tightness, everything that has to be there to put on a great live performance and to get a great live version of an album track, they are so tight here. There's a hell of a lot of rehearsal and that dynamic breakdown where you can hear Maynard as well brings down his vocal to that talking level, so you get such a great dynamic journey throughout this song. Just a quick word about the music and the artistic integrity that these guys have. That's the thing that really does stick out, because they are by no means a band that are being told to sound a particular way. They're just going to perform the way that they want to, and you definitely get the impression with Maynard's vocal as well that he's not saving anything. And a lot of bands, when they do go on tour, will have a particular show or maybe a few shows where they try and save their voice because they know it has to last, whereas with Tool you just got 100% the whole time, and it's just down to that artistic integrity of just putting themselves out on stage all the time, just giving you everything that they are in that moment. And talking about the heavier genre, we're talking about the early 90s here, 1993, this performance, but they were founded in 1990, and just coming off the back of the 80s and the hard rock, the big hair, the long guitar solos, and the fashion choices, things really took a dramatic turn in the early 90s where people started to get deep and detuning their guitars, but the lyrical content in the songs, this is a great example of that, just hit a chord on such a deeper level. It was no longer about girls and going out, having a great time. It was now about really serious issues and things that people were dealing with, normally behind closed doors, but now it was being brought to the front of the stage and literally here. So just getting into the intro, we have a little bit of unison bend action going on, and the point about playing this is don't worry about just being a bit rough and ready with it and not hitting pitches exactly. We're starting on the 12th fret and we're doing a bend up to the 14th fret. That's the pitch that you want to hit. But we're not trying to be exact here. And when we start the song, we get that kind of sound, which is just pushing the bend a little bit too far, which is going to make it sound a little bit nasty, but that's what it's all about. And this, if you've got enough distortion on your sound, it will just fill it all out. But also, look out for the way that Adam Jones here on guitar does put in a little bit of extra picking. So we've got this, and then that, which is going to fill out the sound even more in a little bit of a cleaner tone. You might not appreciate it with all of the distortion, but that was this. And you can see how much more of a ringing out sound we get with the double pick on the B string. So I'm clean that up even more and do it in slow motion. So we're going like that. And You want to keep it like that. Don't match up the notes perfectly because then it will sound too good. You want it to be a little bit nasty. So once you have that, in terms of showing that technique, the double pick, 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 pick. And it's that little down up that you can see Adam just concentrating on. I've just got the video up on screen again so we can see this in action with Adam and that right hand technique. And there we have it. You could see the picking technique on that right hand just being a little bit more precise with that. And then just letting that bend come down again. But just do a down, up, down, up, down, up while you're letting that bend go down. Like that. So before we get into the verse, we're still full in with our guitar sound and we've got the octaves. That kind of thing. And when we get into the verse, the guitar really does drop out. So you can roll off a lot of your volume in order to get that sound on your guitar, and you can still stay with those same octaves. And then when it starts to get a little bit heavier, this is where those bars come in. And then in that chorus, you can go all the way down to that open D string at the bottom. But this is like so many other videos. Once you start scratching beneath the surface, there's so much that you can appreciate about this performance. And thank you guys for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!